Mr. Villa, how are you, brother?
Man, good. Thank you.
How's things been?
Not bad. Big transitions going on. But as far as like regenerative side, it's still full speed.
Nice.
But we're closing down our business. We're going to step back for a minute. Ground culture, all the community's been so good to us that we've kind of expanded, Leighton. And you know this with working with agency, that they can require a lot of insurances that small businesses just can't afford. And, you know, my partner Ray and I are doing this on the side of our full-time job. Our boss has been super cool about letting us dip in and out. But, you know, 3 years into this thing, I realized like there's areas where we can really be successful, but I got to pull back for a minute, get those resources, and then jump back in. And I was telling Ken, I did this before. I used to have a probiotic business called EM in California, back in California, 10, 12 years ago. And when we were trying to sell probiotics 10, 12 years ago, Leighton, you can imagine people are looking at you like an alien. So I realized the educational side is where I needed to be. Mm-hmm. So then that's when I jumped in at South School Tribal Council, Sonoma Biochar Initiative, and Sonoma Ecology Center, and then was able to get resources for living through education, but teaching these things. So, it's all about like stick and move, bob and weave, otherwise the thing could like drain you physically, your resources, and you wish you would have pulled back. So I'm going to take a little break here and figure new strategy.
Got you. So just for the audience sake, so you're no longer producing your products that you were, your biochar and stuff?
We're just got a couple more days left. We're doing the bokashi. We don't sell biochar, but we do a lot of education, teaching people how to make it. And that's where the business was making most of the money, was through education. There's a lot of bokashi sellers out there. There's a lot of biochar. Since we teach people how to make it, it's not like something that enough for me to quit my daytime job to support a family. So, you have to figure out like, okay, there's a lot of money now in education, but there's a lot of insurance required. You're trying to teach people how to make biochar, insurance, here's the word fire, right? You can see like, all right, you don't even have an F2 firefighter. You're not a burn boss. You can't get insurances for these things. So we're in the stages now of doing the education, but now I feel like I got to start inviting more politicians, more legislation, more of the insurance side of things, so they can see how easy and safe these processes are, and then allow us to continue to move forward on educating people, because it's the people that need to do this thing. It's not going to be a big agency that's going to come and do all the fuel reductions and make char. It's landowners, private level. Yeah. So education, we feel like that's an avenue.
Now, can you educate on private land or private property owners, so that you don't have to deal with the insurance regulatory nonsense?
You can, but just for business sense, if something does go wrong, you always want to be insured.
Yep.
So these are the kind of things, I got a property I want to protect, and there's just things you have to do legit, which I'm game to do. It takes a lot of resources, and I think that's why this thing is so slow to get off the ground, because the ones with the resources don't have the knowledge. The ones who have the knowledge don't have the resources, or people just don't want to get involved in that area if they're doing the EM bokashi thing. They want to stay on the business side, which is great. But I mean, for me, like I said, I believe it's going to come from the hands of the people, fermenting their own garbage, reducing their own fuel reductions, and trapping the carbon.
Yep. Now, have you ever looked into what's called ag insurance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Because that's what I use. It's a liability policy that allows me to work on different sites without any issue, and it's really not that expensive. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm not dealing with flames or fire or heat, any of those things. So it might be a bit of a stretch to convince them that that's 100% ag when it's it's an ag product or for ag product.
Yeah, and then now, like, I mean, with bigger agencies, small farms and stuff, that covers fine, but big agencies, believe it or not, want pollution insurance for things like probiotics. You know, they want everyone to have workman's comp insurance.
Mm-hmm.
They want the vehicle on the site to be a business vehicle with business insurance. You know, we're a small company hauling stuff around in our family Prius. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, we can get the job done, but we don't have that paperwork yet that will let us advance deeper in the community. I can still do all the small stuff you see me doing all the time. That's not going to stop. But I need to get into bigger waters, and that takes bigger money.
Yep. The old chicken and the egg. Takes money to do things, but without it, you can't. So you're stuck in that rut.
Yep. You know it. You know it.
All too well, my friend.
But I mean, on the other side, the movement's going strong. You know, people, we just did a biochar workshop for State Park yesterday, Tryon Creek. Great turnout, a lot of private landowners. So, you know, the momentum's there. They wanted us to take on students for a 2-week training program. We usually get them for 1 day at a time. Right. But the students were so excited about what we're doing with making bokashi and biochar. They wanted to come out for 2 weeks at a time. So these are the kind of things where we have the work, but now the business needs to be protected insurance-wise.
Right.
So I can make my deliverables to these nonprofits.
Got you. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's frustrating, my friend. I'm sorry to hear that, but you know, it's usually the way of the universe. You know, we don't always understand or appreciate the way things happen or operate, but later on we come to realize, you know what, that was actually a good thing. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's, you know, something, you know, health-wise that is coming, or you know, some other you know, issue that you're going to avoid as a result of being able to step back, calm down, rebuild and reboot. So,
and I almost look at it like surfing too. You know, you catch these waves and these momentums. You hope it's the big one, but once you get back to shore, you got to take a break sometimes and then paddle back out and catch the next one.
Agreed.
Especially with our industry, you know, this stuff is like really taken off from the closets to the backyard. You know, to now like small little test plots and lands and agency adoption. So all of these things are going to take a lot of maneuvering, but to keep the same joy doing it, you got to position yourself so it's still fun. And if you're getting your ass kicked and frustrated over this and that, it's like, you know what? I can stop this. You guys can still come to my house, and Tuesdays I'm off. We can still do you want to learn how to make biochar? We'll do this underground style too, you know. But it's not going to stop, and it seems more exciting this way. I had somebody out last Tuesday who was a student from the program. He had been asking me, "Hey, I want to shadow what you're doing. I want to shadow what you're doing." So finally, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna come get you Tuesday." And I grabbed him. We had so much fun doing all these different projects, but it wasn't tied to insurances. It wasn't tied to, you know, all the administration that it took to even get him out there. Yeah. And he's like, "Holy, I'm coming over. Cool, let's do it." And we were able to do so many different kinds of projects. And, you know, the young man, he's a disenfranchised community, but he's writing several grants to do restoration work. He's really fell in love with the whole aspects of biology. He loves quantum biology. But, you know, we would have never got this in our communities. But that's why it's like we got to just lean on each other. We can't rely on insurances to do it, or that will ensure what's not going to happen. Right. You know, so we have to just kind of come together. That's always how it's been. When I learned EM, there was no business that was teaching EM. It was the homies, right? You had a friend who did it. You had a friend making bokashi, and they showed you, and then you showed another friend, and we kind of had like this little underground exchange of information happening. You know, and it started with cannabis. So if you were in the cannabis scene, you couldn't talk about these things, you know, out in public. But if you had a little circle of people with strength, like if you needed to move some packs to get your resources, they'd plug you into their system. There was just such a reciprocity happening that's what needed to happen with bokashi, this reciprocity thing happening. And when we can follow those formulas, we can take this thing just like the plant from out of the closet into the world. Yeah, research and development.
Love it, dude. Love it. And you're right. It is all about community. And that's where, it all starts. That's how movements, you know, whether they call them grassroots or whatever, but it starts with a group of people who are like-minded and really want to learn and push the envelope on what we know versus, you know, perhaps the science or perhaps lack of science. I mean, most of my great lessons would have been considered failures by most people, where it's, to me, it's like, oh no, I learned that's not going to work, or holy shit, I was told that wasn't going to work, but it does work. So, you know, again, it's that willingness to experiment and try regardless of failure, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And when you're on that roll, man, you just know, like, this is the move I need to do. You know, like I said, I did it before with EM in California. This is when California cannabis was at its premium. And my position was like, it's going to tank. So I have to like wrap this all up, get out of Cali because it's going to be shit in a minute, but head up to a state that embraces organic farming. And, you know, with that terpene test they were doing in Oregon, I think they were the only one at the time doing a terpene test. That's when I knew, like, that's how they can tell our methods are working, because we blast those terpene tests out of the waters. So I knew, like, we just wrap this up, pull up into Oregon, and then boom, we did it. And, you know, we started this business late. I'm not shitting you. With freaking mud, you know. Bokashi balls is how we got our first money to even get the thing going, to get our websites. So it was like, to be able to build a business and do what we did from really the stuff you're standing on outside, that's exactly what regenerative is about. You know, and it's not that we're shut down. It's like we are in a position where we could really launch, but I have to rebuild my ship, or it's not going to make it through the atmosphere. So we're going to head into waters that are just huge, you know, a lot of major restoration work. Like, it's going to get done, but I have to be supported and insured and protected that we can move forward.
So have you ever played with, so let's back it up. Your bokashi is in a dry form, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it in a clay base, or is it more of like a organic lignin base?
I use coffee shaft. So
Okay.
it's that little paper hull that's on the bean. They separate down at the coffee plant. It's so light and fibery. Characteristic and texture, it's a lot like wheat bran, but lighter. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So have you ever experimented with it on burn scars?
What is it?
Burn scars. So after forest fires?
No.
You know, I'm being drawn into a number of projects down in LA and Malibu as a result of the insanity that happened here in January. And so I'm looking to try to find other alternatives, as well as, you know, like these compost extracts. You know, talked to Keith about using some fish brew products, because he's gearing up to do a metals test with his product. But I'm interested in you know, experimenting with different products. Now, how many square feet does, say, a pound, or how do you sell your product? Is it in a pail, or?
We sell them per pound, per pound.
Okay.
And we do 3/4 cup per square meter on coverage.
3/4 cup per square meter.
Yeah.
So bear with me. 1,000 square feet is how many meters?
We're gonna go like 230.
So 30 by 30.
Yeah.
All right. 3/4 of a cup times 30.
Irrefutable.
Forgive me, because, dude, I am so just burned out after moving for the last 3 weeks. It has just been stupid. 30 times 30 equals 300 divided by.
Bam. Look at it right there.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of pounds, dude.
Yeah.
A lot of pounds.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer. You know, is there a way to expand it? Can you liquefy it, or is it just because it's the little hulls, it wouldn't really work?
Well, I think for cost effectiveness, we would go in with the liquid spray, but then I would almost make like a liquid bokashi, like you're saying, but I would wring out almost like you're making a tea with some of the wheat bran and rice bran that I would use as a catalyst to go in with my extended EM, so I can get all those starches and stuff in there.
Yep.
And then I would launch that out. But I would extract the starches from rice and wheat, just sock that shit up. Even do your 1:1 to 20 extension with the EM with that mix. But you'll get a lot of characteristics like your bokashi from that liquid brew. Maintaining that we use bioceramics so we don't get no drift from the microbials, and or sea salts. When we're using EM, and I've been brewing this thing for 20 years. I feel like I don't drift is because my relationship with the bioceramic is so different. I think even like the EM guys, they hardly even know what their bioceramics are. But these are really the keys to keep your stuff from drifting, because it supports the electron-loving microbial colony, the PNSB. So that's what I need to have in there and make sure I'm not drifting as I add in these other components to my teas.
Because we had another group on the owners of EM1. And they talked about that. It's like, well, you can expand it, but what happens is if you continue to expand it through exclusive competition, you start to squeeze out some of the other communities, and you end up with a less potent end result. And, that was I didn't want to I didn't want to go toe to toe with them on trying to understand better how that as long as you're supporting the entire community, why would one outcompete the others? But it sounds like you've already got that figured out.
Yeah, that goes like when we learned EM, we had to learn bioceramic hand in hand. It wasn't like you could know EM bokashi but then not know bioceramic. They're all together. It's just only that you picked a certain level to stop at, and think this was the holy grail, when you have to realize it's all works together. Because once you have that understanding, then that's what makes the quantum biology a little bit more digestible, because you already had that prior knowledge of how these things function together. And you can see a lot of this stuff happening in our circles. We're a lot of the talk shows when it comes to, you mentioned quantum biology or electromagnetic farming and things like that. It's stopping at a certain level, because these are things that make us have to really learn something new, dissolve a bunch of things that we once knew, and it should just be natural that we don't really know anything and we always are trying to learn. So it's easier to learn new things that are coming through the system if you already know, fuck, I really don't know what's happening. Let me catch this one and put it through my filter and see how it works. So missing the bioceramics means you miss the electromagnetism component of EM, that far infrared, which is really the song of biology. So that's a key component.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. We often have a phrase, oh shit, I'm going to have to unlearn you and reteach you, because you're stuck in a rut on a concept that was of some value years ago, but we've learned so much more since then that it's really not decent information anymore. It's the foundation of something that is far greater. And this goes back to whether it's something as simple as, well, I've been doing it this way for 30 years and it's fine. Well, it is and it isn't. First of all, it wasn't nearly as expensive 30 years ago when you were doing it. The synthetic fertilizers weren't built up as much in the soil. They hadn't decimated and collapsed the soil on so many levels. Stripping the CEC, the paramagnetism, off of all of those exchange sites. Now the clay can't bind anything. So, does it still work? Yeah, kind of. But then you start adding in, well, the weather's changed. The soil's so hot that it's not allowing the rains to come when they used to. When we do get rains, they're deluge, and we lose all of it to erosion. And, these are all the consequences of not learning the new ways. It's not trying to step out of the rut and try to understand the dynamics of, how powerful Mother Nature is on our own. And yeah, we we tried to tweak it, and we learned the hard way that it does more damage than it does good. But then you've got all the politics and the money behind it, which is the problem. It's preventing people from stepping out and trying these new things. So I applaud you for the hard work and education, because that's the key to the whole thing. It's like, if you can just flip that little light switch once, then maybe all of a sudden they're going to be, hey, what about this light switch? What about this light switch? What about this light switch?
Yep.
I think that's the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's just no doubt. And I feel like, we're here to talk about biochar. And these are one of those things where we know a lot about biochar, but then now there's this new area where this biochar is highly electrical state biochar. And we have to decide now, how much do we want to learn about biochar? And at least for me, I've been involved with Sonoma Biochar Initiative for over a decade. Thought I knew quite a bit about biochar, and then the EM boys team up with MIT, and then they bring us this thing called Graviton charcoal, which, if you understand a little bit about the electrical current going through current charcoal, those little bits of energy can travel throughout the semiconductor property of the biochar pretty freely. But when we create this Graviton charcoal, it creates a surface area, mainly from minerals, but a surface area that allows the electrons to ride through the surface at much faster rates by just staying on the top. And it functions a lot like graphene. Graphene is one of these new things we're starting to hear a lot about: semiconductors, batteries, cars, and you can replace lithium ions with graphene. So we're figuring out how to create graphene at a very inexpensive way. So MIT and EM have now created, and they teach how to create this charcoal with high electrical states that they said they have not seen outside of thermal fusion. And this is just reactions within the soil. So if we can have bits of electrons traveling from sun to soil at such a rapid speed without losing energy, and maybe even gaining potential through these high surface area biochars, you can see where they can just start to spin and create these fusions within soil that are truly beneficial to biological life.
So before we go down the experiment that you did at Compost Camp, let's talk a little bit about that specific type of biochar. So is the material different? Is it still a hardwood, or is it something, a softwood, or what is the key to getting those electrons to transfer?
We can use all types of biomass to create this high intensity biochar. The trick's going to be when I cool the char down. So if I can have my EM microbial teas with lots of minerals brewed into them, then that means all of those little microbes are holding minerals inside of their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then I throw in my sea salts to really ramp up the charges, bioceramic powder to maintain the harmony in which I'm looking for in the far infrared, and casting all of this into a fire that's burning in flux allows it to record all of the information as it cools down. So as all these minerals hit the surface of that char, it's going to coat it. So we're making a coating, Leighton.
Yep.
We're thinking about making a coating on this char, and the coatings are going to be minerals. The more minerals I can get in the surface and in the bodies of the microbes gives me a better plating. I'm like doing electroplating. And it's actually, when you look at this char under a microscope, when it's done in this way, they have only seen carbon structure this way under electrolysis type. Yeah. So you can see where it's something there where then now these things want to flow in the least state of resistance. So if I can put that surface area super conductive, you see what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Things pass. Yeah. So those would be the components that they're using, is the EM, lots and lots of minerals, sea salts, lots of conductivity, and the bioceramic powder. The key to getting this thing to jam.
All right, let's break this down a little bit more. Bioceramic powder, is that atomized clay?
No, so EM sells a powder called EM Super Sera powder.
Okay.
It's on their website. It's micronized down to like a 7 micron. It goes through all the filters beautifully. But what it is, it's basically like a quartz crystal rock. They grind this sucker down to a powder, throw it into a kiln, 2,000 degrees. This is going to erase the memory from the quartz and put that into flux.
Yep.
So it's like you're making biochar, right? So you got carbon in flux. So as the carbon is in flux from the 2,000 degrees, then they cool it down with their EM gold, their EM consortia, and it records all of these goodies onto the crystal.
Yep.
You can imagine how much that amplifies at that point. Like I might have told you, for me, when I got sucked into the business, my friend did the wine test with that stuff. Did I tell you that one, Layton?
No.
Okay, check it, bro. You get that ceramic powder. He had poured 2 glasses of wine, and it was the $2 Chuck that that $2 Chuck, cheap red wine. And he pours 2 glasses of that, and he has me taste it, one of them. And it was bitter. It was hot. A little bit of fruit. The other one, bitter, hot. A little bit of fruit, identical. Terrible. He grabs the bag of ceramic powder, puts it just next to one of the glasses. 20 seconds is all it's going to take you, Layton. Had me taste that wine. It was unbelievable. Causes spin, which we know from physics.
Mm-hmm.
The far infrared hits those little molecules. It gets them to spin so fast. Before they were all bonded together, but as they gain speed, they spin and go upright like a top. This means the tannins and the acids all start to separate. Yep. The fruit comes forward. It was like sandpaper for the wine. I was like, what the fuck happened? Because this now is something that happens that you can't see, but has a physical effect. So you know at that point, there's something happening with these microbes. That is like Jedi shit. And we tried it. We tried on everything, man. The homies Hennessy, coffee, you can do it on a pale ale. Anything really bitter and sharp would just smooth the shit out of it. So I was like, damn, later on in years to come, Dr. Emoto tells us what's happening, right? With restructured water. Yep. And the physics happening where we almost move it into a 4th phase gel state. So if I was just to do that to water, it's going to really move it into a gel state. But that's the key. Like for me, when I knew about this, because I knew about EM. So then later on in life, it was like 5 years later, I went to a biochar workshop and I saw what was happening with carbon in flux. I knew right then, like, all right, why can't I just cool the biochar like they do the ceramic? Mm-hmm. Then I can make me some biochar that's got far infrared jamming on it, because that's how they're doing the ceramic. Of course, my carbon's different, but it's still going to keep that power. So this is the concepts where we just learn naturally. I've always added teas to my biochar, but now luckily MIT and EM keep that thing running where we can have the science where it's not bro science. This is what's happening, next level stuff. If you want to move your thing up a notch, for me, I look to the uncles and aunties of the indigenous community to what's happening for regenerative. Some look to science. If MIT don't get the science boys going, you know what I mean? It's like, either way we look at it, we should all be moving towards this direction, because uncles and aunties are saying thumbs up. They've always made stuff this way. University now catching up. This is something magical happening when you do it this way. And if we want to be here on the rock, we got to adapt with what works.
Well, that's something that I don't think a lot of people really know, is that, the indigenous people used liquid smoke, or they called it liquid smoke, which was the liquid that comes off of the distillation of the smoke from the biochar making, as a natural insecticide, and especially, to prevent the germinated seedlings from getting consumed right out of the gate. And so it's interesting that, here again we're in 2025 and we're looking back at some of the messages that have been told to us by the people that lived here before we conquered it, that work, and not only work well, they're unbelievable force to reckon with. So a question on the wine. When you finish the glass of wine, was there aquatic snow on the bottom of the glass, or because it was red, you couldn't see it?
No, you would just look like the normal glass of wine. I mean, truthfully, I didn't finish it. I tasted it a few times and just was so amazed by the smoothness of the thing. But it just seemed just like the other wine. You know, the legs on it seemed the same.
Okay.
But yeah, everything seemed kind of the same, but only the taste. Like it was almost like decanting the wine.
There you go.
Yeah, but much. And then, you know, I learned because I spent 10 years in Napa. Some of our best wine caves that we have that age wine, there's like a ton of crystals in Napa underground. But the caves, the good wine caves, those are all surrounded with crystals around those. It's just a natural crystal in Napa. So the crystal relationship with something about that aging, it goes hand in hand. And since I was in Napa, of course, I had to show this to a bunch of wine guys. And these guys would either look at, be like, this is the greatest thing in the world, or never want to talk to you again. Because, yeah, there were sometimes we would like be able to, especially with some of the Cabernets, you can hold it for 5 seconds and see what it'd be like in 5 years. Because, they're aging them certain times.
Yep.
10 seconds, 10 years. 15 seconds. We can kind of forecast what they're going to age like because I'm spinning them instantly. And
Yep.
That's what they need to happen to age, is to spin and break, spin and break, spin and break, till they become so smooth and soft and elegant. But we can do that with that ceramic. So that ceramic for me, dog, was like the kicker. Like, there's stuff we can't see, but it's like hits hard. And it moves stuff that we can't see, but it's like the moon moving the tides,
This goes back to a better understanding on bioavailability or non-bioavailability. So a lot of vitamins and minerals that people buy at the nutrition store or grocery store, when they're manufactured synthetically, there's a very, very small fraction of those that are actually have the electrons spinning in the right rotation for it to be bioavailable, for our body to be able to take it in and use it. And I think a lot of ways what you're talking about with the ceramics is exactly that, is that it's now gotten, it's stimulated the electrons to a point where they're spinning in probably the opposite rotation that they were, or maybe they didn't really have any spinning, they were all frozen. And that's why you had that bitter taste and that, lack of fruit flavor to the wine. And this goes back to some of the shit that Andy, the Invisible Gardener, which Ken has on a weekly show on Wednesdays, I believe, was talking about years ago. And that was that, his background growing up with his mother was considered a medicine person, a medicine woman. And a lot of times she would take precious and semi-precious gems. Now they're all crystals, right? Same thing. And she would grind them up, with a mortar, pestle, or hammer, whatever, depending on how hard they were, and then add those to the patient's soup or water or juice or whatever to get them to ingest it. But again, those were the things that were causing or curing or at least dealing with some of the symptoms of the people that came to be treated by her. So there is something there that we've known for a long time, but just haven't been able to explain it. I mean, hey, look, we just started talking about subatomic particles like in mainstream, 10 years ago, maybe 15 or 20 if you were paying attention. Prior to that, it was like, what's a fucking electron? What's a proton? What's a neuron? Right? And I attribute a lot of this to the cannabis industry because of the lighting. It really got people to open their eyes to understand, the power of the sun, the power of the photons, how to nutritionally get their plants to grow bigger and be more robust and show more terpene and expression in the secondary, tertiary metabolites that we want. So it's really cool that the EM crew teamed up with MIT to kind of unlock some of these pieces.
Yeah, it definitely answered a lot of questions, gave a lot of us who've been doing it a long time it made it authentic what we were looking at, so we can continue to move forward. Because sometimes these things, they just get lost. It's like bro science, or what's the other woo side of things. It's just like, dude, there's do wine. People don't know about the wine trick. You won't even tell me about woo if you did the wine thing. You probably run all the way home from after you taste it, because you'll be so freaked out that you just now have to delete so much of your shit that you thought you knew, right? And it's just like that's what it does. But I think that's kind of like the gift of the plant, cannabis. How if it wasn't for that plant, would I have been open-minded enough to look at these areas, and then even as we knew we had strength in the cannabis community, but then there was like this other sharper edge of the cannabis bokashi world, where these guys had both things going for them, and they wanted to move the thing forward, and it really got the thing excited of like, well, we're onto something here, you guys. And like back in the day, to find another bokashi guy or girl, it was impossible. There wasn't a lot of people around, so we'd always latch onto each other. And, man, what's up? Like family reunion or something. We didn't know each other. We'd meet on a forum or something. But now it's kind of moved into an area where the EM bokashi guys, they're kind of separate. They don't want to reach out to each other. I mean, I'm reaching out to them all the time, and they're probably like, what's wrong with this fucking dude? But to me, that's the culture. We always done it. If you're a true bokashi person or EM person, man, we're friends. That's because that's the bottom line of the foundation of everything. It's like if I'm out of business because everyone's selling bokashi, that's why I got in it. If we have an abundant amount of bokashi, that means the rivers are clean. But now people are getting into it, and they don't want to like be friends or talk to you, or they think it's competition. I mean, even like I think like the EM people, we haven't even reached out to each other yet, the new owners, and I've been doing this thing a long time, and there's things they just don't know yet. And it's like, man, EM is about family. It's not competition. It's cooperation. So I encourage all the people, like, I'm pulling back from the bokashi, but if y'all still selling bokashi, it's time for you to link up and make your voice strong and bring this stuff together and teach it to the community, because that's where it came from. You just didn't pick up on it to do a business. You're going to pick up on that and do what it originally came from, sharing it with your community. Business second, but you gotta get that thing out there. Otherwise, you're just one of the chads, like in cannabis, come to just take over.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of human nature when it comes to money. As soon as money gets involved, the ego steps in, and then it's, my information, my product. No, it isn't your product. It's a product of nature, motherfucker.
Right. Right. But it's something like it should bring us all together, like cannabis did, like EM did. If we all like jumped on it and saw it that way, we'd move it at a speed of light. And then we'd have insurance companies understanding what these things are. Then we'd be able to clean water much quicker. But now everyone's just kind of hoarding it to themselves a little bit. It's like, nah, man. Tell me how you navigated your insurance shit. Because I'm trying to teach this in schools.
No, and that again is why I commend you so much, is that you're starting at the foundational level, which will pass on. I mean, a friend of mine who runs it's like a bioreactor, like a Johnson Soup bioreactor for food scraps at the schools. He said one of the most interesting things that came out of it was it opened the teacher's mind so much that she stepped outside, or they stepped outside of the curriculum on some of these other things that are happening in the composting process, like thermodynamics, like, bugs and worms, and, all of the other things that really make soil rich, right? They make soil. It's not dirt, it's soil now. Yeah. And so it sparked the kids. Now the kids were all excited to come to school and excited to learn more about, nature, and not just this blah, 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 blah bullshit.
It was like, I think about right now, people who are listening who use bokashi or use the EM and it's helped them and they loved it. If each person who appreciated EM and sent the EM teacher's manual to their kids' teacher or to their local school. There's an EM teacher's manual we've been using for 15 years that nobody knows about, you know? And if you can get this thing into any school, because they got to have the curriculum to match the outdoor stuff. Because like, if EM has helped your business, if you're living okay at all because of the profits you're making from your crops, just send an email to the local school, EM's teacher manual, and they'll pick it up and run, you know. But it's like little components like that we don't talk about. But it's like we really need to get it out there because, like you just mentioned, the kids want to come to school. And right now they don't. But if we get these little things in there, not only do they want to come to school, but you want to go help them in the school. And that's what starts to build a community. You know, then you get involved with your kids' school. Then you get to meet their friends. Then you get to meet their parents. And that's really how to come. That's what EM's trick is about, building community like that. But you have to like share it with people. You can't just like, oh, I'm going to, this is great for me. This is for me. This is for me. No, man, it's for you to practice and get it down, but then share it. Just send that EM teacher's manual to some educators. Post it on your page. Somebody will grab it and be like, you're missing to get this curriculum in.
So another interesting thing, similar to composting, similar to EM, is aquaponics. And what aquaponics teaches people is, or kids, is that the fish need the plants and the plants need the fish, and they work together in unison. And what you take out of that in the water actually becomes a bioinoculant in the soil. And it really closes the loop on everything. And kids walk in and they see a fish tank and they get all excited, right? And then they look over at the plants and realize that the fish are feeding the plants, and it connects the loop. Now they're talking about water quality, temperature, pH, EC, you know, right across the board of all of these things that are not being taught, and probably not until collegiate level, that these kids could have had the foundation of, and that would have launched them to a point where they would be way ahead of their peers when they do get into the, you know, later stages of the educational world.
Yep.
So again, what you're saying is it just adds on top of level, on top of level, on top of level of what the potential we could be teaching our children. So again, huge up for the work you're doing. Now, I don't want to, you already got more questions than I've ever had. All right. You're at 14, but we're not going to break to questions just yet. I want to finish the conversation that we're having about the ceramics. All right. So we now know the ceramics are doing some really powerful things as far as stimulating electrons within the carbon source. Pushing forward, you talked about minerals. And are those in the forms of rock powder or rock dust or rock meal?
Yes, sir. All of those, whatever your choice, azomite, glacier rock dust, any kind of minerals like that.
And those are going into the fire.
Those are going in your big tea brew that you're going to cool it down with.
Okay.
First, you're going to use it to make a brew of EM.
Gotcha.
Use a 10% of your mineral. Then you're going to add in 10% after that more. So you'll have some microbe in the bodies, and then you'll have some microbes on the outsides.
Gotcha.
Or some minerals on the inside of the microbes and some minerals on the outside of the tea. Yeah.
You know, that was one of the foundational things that the hippies that used to grow cannabis up in the mountains way back when understood, was to adding those, you know, those rock flowers and minerals and rock dust. But they never understood that the bacteria was actually mining the nutrient out, or nutrient value out of that, and storing it in its pantry. Mm-hmm. And it's only once a protozoa eats that bacteria and poops out that stuff is it plant available. Mm-hmm. So it makes a lot of sense that you're adding it into the brew prior, and then you're adding it into the brew after. So you're filling all the bugs up with it, and then you're coating the actual carbon source with it as well.
Yep.
This is fucking next level.
See it now. Good man. You see it.
Yeah, this is next level. All right. And so there we have the complete story of this quantum char, for lack of a better word.
Well, almost. You forgot that EM and MIT real quick. They'll stick a copper rod in the middle of all this shit, dog, to try to catch subtle energy from the ionosphere.
Well, that I was going to get there next was the plan.
Yeah. So then that copper rod is sitting inside of a tub of inside a little container of EM liquid, and that's all covered. So the rod's just sitting in liquid, sitting. You know, you got copper energy coming down to the soil.
Oh, whoa, wait a minute! I didn't get that. I didn't realize that you were using electroculture in the EM. I thought that was you only did the electroculture after you put the stuff in the soil. Or am I wrong?
They're doing the electroculture after they assemble the biochar. So your perimeter of your square garden, the four corners are going to have pits dug into them where you're going to sink in all that biochar that we just described that we made. So once you made all that supercharged biochar, I dug them into four corners of my perimeter of the garden. And that's basically a pit of char now. Then that's when they're going to stick a copper rod inside of a jar of liquid filled with EM and cover that up. So you'll have 4 posts of electrical rods around your perimeter sitting in a tub of EM liquid and biochar squared.
Underneath
biochar in the tubs. Then, and then they'll connect the perimeter with bokashi balls every 3 feet to connect those 4 connections, and then pour salt water from the electrocurrent over the bokashi balls around the perimeter, salt water. So you have a very highly conductive perimeter going around the garden area. So
no copper wire joining the 4 pieces?
No, just out of the post, the 4 corners.
Yep.
Into the atmosphere. Yeah.
Okay. So it is.
So the salt water would be your underground. That's where, bokashi balls would be the amplifier. As it hits the ball, it'll pick up speed and go through the salt, pick up speed, go through salt, pick up speed until it finds its way to the main post.
Amazing.
Right?
So you took electroculture to another level because, again, you're using the matrix of the soil itself as the copper wire because of your salt water and your bokashi balls.
Yeah, this ain't me. This is MIT. And I'll tell you straight up, Layden, I ignored electroculture as long as I could until these guys jumped in on it. I was like, what the hell? This is real? You're kidding me. So then when I saw them build these things, I was just like, holy shit. Joke's on me. These guys were real when they were putting this wire in the ground. But of course, we were connecting them on top. That's what I was watching. But EM guys made the saltwater connection. Mm-hmm.
So the new owners don't even know about this, do they?
I guess not. And you know what's funny is EM's actually making a whole city. You know, we're talking about cities burning down, and they want to make these smart cities. We don't realize there's an alternative to that right now. EM has created something. If you look up EM Universal Village, they have the spot opening in April, man. And this EM Universal Village is a model on how we should build cities sustainably. So if you can imagine MIT and EM getting together to think about what does a city need to sustain itself? How's it set up? What's the infrastructure like? Dog, they have it going, and we can go there in April and check it out with our own eyes. It's almost done.
Where are they building it?
In Japan.
Oh, go figure. Someone with an open mind.
My point is, though, we always hear about these other cities that aren't so favorable, but when we have these like regenerative cities, I can't believe no one's talking about these kinds of things. Regenerative cities where they're doing Graviton charcoal and all these things we're talking about. It's just the normal part of their daily life. It's in the schools. It's in the waste management. EM facilities there. It's just like, dude, we're missing something. We were so busy doing something else, we missed how to build a city.
Well, we've been distracted. That's the real case. When I was at Rodale, there was a group from Japan who came over and were working at Rodale, teaching an ancient art of cultivating with nature. And I mean, they had everything from crops on the roofs of the homes that they built there. They had their own wastewater treatment facility, their own, composting of human manure. They were using, urine as a fertilizer. All of these things that are amazing The problem is we concentrate them. And it's like anything, even the most organic thing, if too much of it, it's going to be a poison, right? And that's what we've done, is create the concentration, which causes the poison, instead of the dilution at the source that would benefit everything around them. I mean, their buildings there were amazing and beautiful, and they were year round. Like even in the snow came, there were still plants, poking their heads through the snow, because they had everything that they needed to continue to, they weren't growing like crazy, but they were still surviving. They were doing fine. It goes back to that biomass in the soil, prevents the soil from freezing. And even if the soil does freeze, the mycorrhizae are still doing their business and bringing nutrients back and forth. So, again, that bio heat that comes from organisms transferring moving liquid or bouncing off each other, it's amazing. And again, like you were saying, or like I said earlier, that the indigenous ways were so perfectly tailored, and we need to really focus on going back to those.
Well, you know what, Layton, you're the only one. I wish I could have just hugged you when I heard it too. I was watching it on one of the shows. You're the only one who ever mentioned the ringing cedars of Russia that I've talked to. And when we look at indigenous cultures, this is a representation of European indigenous culture, right? Russian culture. And the gems that are in that book for building homesteads, for building community, for building government, for taking carbon out of the air. It's just like, how has nobody even read this book before? So we have like all these models. I mean, so many things are in that ringing cedars of Russia component, where makes you just start to wonder, like, man, what was this book about? Because the dude wasn't a writer, right? He just like pulled the only book he ever created was this thing. And there's like home run after home run after home run when it comes to regenerative on how to do things. Of course, there's that bunch of stuff in there too, where you got to keep an imagination, like a fairy tale being told. But there's also some foundational stuff in there, especially when it comes to microbial, the implosion and the explosion stuff Anastasia described. It's just like, man, we don't think about the opposite of everything. But I love you for that one. And I encourage everyone to dig into their own indigenous culture, whether it's, ringing cedars of Russia, or from Turtle Island, or wherever you're from.
The key to that whole book, right, is that it's so powerful, it's almost non-believable, it's almost fantasy. But then if you really dive deep, they found dolmens all over Russia. And the dolmens were the key to passing the information on to the next generation and the next generation. So it was never lost. So if you read the book and you go, oh, this is bullshit, do your digging, do your due diligence. You'll find that they, as a result, and remember, this guy had never written a book in his life. He was a friggin', I forget, he was a shipping company.
Ship guy, yeah.
Yeah, he was running ships up and down the friggin' river. He had nothing to do with any of this mysticism or woo-woo or whatever you want to label it as. And it was only because of universal desire to get the message out that he ran into Anastasia in the first place, right? Otherwise, that would have never happened. The book would have never been written. The dolmens, they'd still be to this day looking at him going like, wonder why somebody built a round circle like that, right?
Yeah, that is good.
So yeah, I think it's Anastasia and the Ringing Cedars is the name of the book. But we'll get Ken to look it up because I noticed there was a couple of questions. Yes, there we go. And start with number 1. But I think there's 12 books, and as you get up into 8 through 12, it gets friggin' deep. But you know what? They're talking about plasma energy. And plasma energy has just started to be really discussed and talked about as potentially the key to another dimension or into the inner dimensions.
Yeah, the ray is nothing but quantum, right? When she talks about the ray, that's nothing but quantum.
And to be honest with you, back in 2000 and must have been 4. I was at my wit's end. I was running a project, a very, very big project. I was short-staffed. I was working 7 days a week, and we were getting to the point where it's about 3/4 the way done, and I was running out of steam. And I just got pissed one night. It was 10 o'clock. It was pouring rain. I've been home all day, never got a chance to see my kids other than when they came home from school to give me a hug and go back upstairs. And it was pouring rain, and I just went out in the middle of my parking lot, got on my knees, and just started screaming at God, top of my lungs. What the fuck do you want from me? I'm fucking done with this. I want to be with my family. I don't want to be a slave to this bullshit. I've had enough. Fuck this shit. Dude, the loudest noise you could possibly imagine. All I could see was blue light, just blue beyond blue. I was on my knees, soaking wet in the parking lot. Next thing, I'm back in the garage, pretty much dry, staring out at the rain, going, how the fuck did I get from there to here?
Wow.
And my ears were ringing, right? And when I read Anastasia and her talk about the blue ray, that's the plasma, dude. That is the plasma. That is the source of incredibly powerful energy. And dude, after that, I never thought the same way again. It changed my entire thought process about the way I looked at everything in life. I'm not saying go out there and hold a fucking kite up and try to get yourself bolted. Don't do that. Or please don't do that. I unfortunately I asked for it and I got it. Not that I knew what the fuck I was asking for, or how it was going to change me forever. But that's when I really connected what Anastasia was talking about, and also the beings, the extraterrestrial beings or whatever you want to call them, those energy beings that came in, that how the cedars were collecting that blue energy all the time, and that's what made them ring. So it really connected a lot of dots for me in my life. Nice, dude. Yeah, the blue orbs.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I love that. Awesome. Cool story. I listened to there's an audiobook on YouTube. If you don't want to read it, it's free on YouTube. She kind of sounds like your kindergarten school teacher when she reads it to you. So you might fall asleep, but it's so nice. So definitely jump on it. Great
story. All right, we're at halfway through almost, and we got 16 questions. Congratulations, my friend. You've stacked up the most questions of anybody. So Ken, let's dive in them, see if we can get through them before we run out of time.
Well, I just want to say about the energy, anything, guys, is possible. It may not be likely, but somewhere at some time, it is possible for anything you can conceive in your mind to become reality. And guys, Russia, if you go back far enough in history, I don't want to get too deep into it, but Russia is the foundational life beings that first came to our planet, and their knowledge that they left, that's what you guys are talking about. And it is so foundational, where we have so much more inside of us we have not reached, or we have been held back from our genetic potential and our understandings. These are just physical forms. They're just bags of biology. It's our energy, the essence of who we are, that you need to take and move to that next level. But anyway, saying that, we'll get into the questions. And this
one little quick thought is that if you really want to understand why Russia, look up Tartarian. It was an empire that has been stolen. History, right? All history is the victor's decision of what happened. It has nothing to do with what really happened. It's just the victor saying, oh no, this is the history. This is what we did. This is all about us. But Tartarian, they had levitation, they had hot air balloons, zeppelins. They had every single building was an electromagnetic generator. and they're tracking this back to the pyramids and many other civilizations that were perhaps even greater than what we understood. Like the Egyptians, they have these bowls and fucking vases made of granite that we can't fabricate to this day, and those were found to be 5,000 to 10,000 years earlier than the Egyptian Empire. So where did they come from, right? So do your friggin' homework, and you'll really start to unleash what Ken is talking about. The yogis in India have been doing this for thousands of years. They've transcended beyond. They don't eat food. They don't drink water. They don't need to do anything because they are light beings. They're living off of the energy of the light. So shutting up now, let's get to the question.
I know, Lynn, we'll have to go into this one of these days because there's stuff and knowledge that people just have missed that has been hidden from us, and it's coming out now. And the next year or two, guys, you are going to be absolutely freaked out. But the woo-woo stuff is where we need to focus on.
And it ain't woo-woo.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so first question. This came in even before the show started. I'm already using SCDEM in my outdoor garden. Should I also get Fish Brew Bowl Flow product as well?
You know, I'm all about diversity, right? So I think in many ways the biology coming from the aquatic ecosystem, which really is the same, but it will support or encourage or create greater value from the EM because they're all going to work together. So diversity. If it's not needed, if that microorganism is not needed now, it'll cyst or it'll become food for something else, or genetic horizontal genetic gene transfer, or what is that called? Biosimulation, where one of the bacteria goes inside another bacteria, and then when that bacteria divides, becomes a whole new strain of bacteria. More diversity, the better.
And see, I'm broke all the time, so I can't make my brews adding in things that I want. I gotta just use the things that I know are gonna work. So SCD probiotics is an amazing brew. And since those little microbes are just gonna be eaten up by the indigenous microbes there, it always seems to work like it needs to. And it wasn't like the other day, Leighton, I've been treating this pond with EM. It's probably about 5 acres, 7 acres. And we've been treating it for 2 years. And it's turned into a largemouth bass freaking mecca.
I can own that.
Yeah. So, but here's what happened is I took my son fishing there the other day, and he hasn't caught a fish since he was 14. And not because he hasn't tried, he just been getting skunked. He ended up hooking into a 5-pounder, Leighton, and we kept the thing. We ate them, but I kept the scales because what I'm learning is if I can send the scales to someone with a microscope, they can count the rings like the rings of a tree. And if the rings are really close together, that means there wasn't a lot of food that year. But if the rings are further apart, that means that there's more food. So being a 5-year-old fish, I can begin to calculate how these fish are doing as far as like enough food during winter, like they've had over the years. And I like now we just come out of, January, there's frogs everywhere. Fish fry are already hatching. So that means these mother bass just started spawning as soon as the daylight got longer. And that means there's zooplankton there. That's what the babies are eating, right? And the rotifers and stuff.
Yep, the rotifers. Those rotifers are the critical bridge that we've broken in so many of our rivers, streams, and lakes.
So that's where we need people to look at. What's that rotifer EM relationship? Because that's what we need to get the ponds to.
Well, if you look at what a rotifer does, right? A rotifer is a street sweeper.
You're right.
They nutrient cycle like mofos, like better than ciliates, because they literally just sweeping everything right down their throat and processing right out the other end.
Nice.
So, and that's all that nutrient value goes back into other biology or aquatic plants. Everything that stimulates that pond to come back greater and greater and greater.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, remember, like the birds are also our best friend as far as helping seed these aquatic systems, because they do bring eggs and algae and other things both on their legs and in their manure.
Fuck yeah.
So
We have the white pelicans always flew over this landowner's pond every year. They never landed. This year they landed and stayed 4 days, and they ate 4 pounds of fish each, you know.
Yep.
But this is the kind of things where, like, I know they took fish, but they must have left some good shit behind.
Oh, they definitely
Yeah.
they fertilized that place wonderfully.
Fuck yeah.
Well, you guys got to remember that the more biodiversity you have, the more molecules of different stuff you need. So it's that diversity of biology. You need the diversity in available molecules of different components to build that new or missing biology. Without that, you can't have the horizontal gene transfer work its best, because it's going, okay, I have the genetic code, but I don't have the materials to build this biology or to build this cell. So you have to have the combination of both. But it all starts with that aquatic biology, that, you know, foundational biology, because without that, your predator prey doesn't work. You have to have, you know, the food source for the later stages of biology. If you don't have that, you can't sustain. That's why I love, Leighton, your system, the horizontal soil system, because it is designed to set up all the different layers of biology that is necessary to sustain and grow that life.
Nice.
So our next question, do you reuse your water culture to make new microbes? Terraganic said he, last time they said never do that.
Yeah, I always reuse the water, or excuse me, the water I'm going to be treating. I use that for my extension. The water I'm going to be irrigating my crops with, I use that for the extension. To maintain the original brew, it's probably not a smart thing to do, but I need microbes that are going to live in the water system in which is supplied for them. So what that means is that's the water they're going to get. Oh, I have no other choice, right? I can't filter or gas off all my water that I'm using in a 100-acre farm. So I have to expose them to what the problem is. So if I can expose the EM to the water they're going to be in, there's going to be some switching and changing. But that's why I love that bioceramic so much. That's going to maintain at least the P&SB guys. Labs and yeast are pretty easy to keep going. But for me, I need that P&SB to be in there. And if I don't have salts or bioceramics, then could have some differentiations in what I think is a potential good probiotic brew, whether you want to call it EM or not. But I'm looking for a good probiotic brew that's going to work exclusively for that. That means I have to use the water for which is part of that environment. But if I'm making an EM to keep as EM and resell as EM, you have to use clean water and do everything, you know, so you don't drift from that. But real world applications is different from lab work for sure.
No knocking on the crew from Terraganics. They just bought the business. They haven't done the years of legwork behind it. And as I think we've just sussed out, they probably don't even know about the relationship with MIT. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. They probably don't understand the science behind it and what was done. So at some point, may behoove us to reach out to them and say, hey, let's pull you all in a chat, not to fight. Not to fight.
No, we need to work together. We need to be working together. Not that, I mean, if we want to move the microbes forward, I don't know how we have not all got together already. You know, anybody that's involved in EM or bokashi, we should all be a team.
And
it's not a competition. I'm not even in business no more. So you know what I mean? So that's yeah. So it's just like, dude, I give all my shit freely because I know that's 10 times more is going to come back to me. I'm not worth nothing. Yeah.
That's the unfortunate part that people don't understand when you start talking about money.
No, I would love to see EM advance around America, but that's going to take them having to partner with people maybe they're not used to, right? Maybe it's different. But if we all have the same intentions, we can get EM to do what it's been doing since it's gotten here 20 plus years ago.
So people are wondering if you start with a new bottle of EM, or you're just starting from what you have in existence now. Is there, should people need to keep buying it? I basically is what I think the situation is.
Yeah, for me, I was able to buy it once, to get it once and then keep that thing going. But you should keep a brew that you try to maintain as much of the original form as possible. So you'll have one tank set that's just basically like your main bank tank. Then you take from that one to go do the other projects. And those other projects is how you start switching around with different waters and things like that. But keeping one set at least that you maintain as much as you can, cleanest waters that you can do, good sugars. At least you have one that's like that. But it's not the law. I've gone times, have over 20 years where I didn't have my main tank was the one I was playing with and doing jobs. And then I brought it back to a state. So EM is very forgiving and works with the person as long as the person is working with the EM, I think,
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of that relationship. It's just like when you grow pot or grow a plant, it starts to tell you what it needs and what it wants and what to do with it next. And don't be afraid to do that with it. It's a coworker over time, and you guys learn how to relate to each other in environments and even different places of entry based on what's required for that site.
It goes back to your terroir. Every situation is different, and specifically, working in a specific area or with a specific soil type, you could really dial things in, is what you're saying.
100%, man. You see that.
Yep. Okie dokie. How do you ferment with EM? Activate EM for a week, then ferment plants right away using EM plus molasses?
So I do 1 to 20, 1 part EM, 1 part molasses, 20 parts water, anaerobic fermentation. Usually takes about 10 to 14 days. pH drop. You want to get 3.0, 3.5, looking good. Then from that brew, I'll take some out. And then if I was going to make an FPJ, I would then do my 1 part molasses, 1 part EM, 1 part plant matter, 20 parts water.
Okay. Next question. What to do with as alternative to, as an alternative to JMS?
I think you just said.
I know. Pretty much, right? Yeah. Put your plants in your EM brew, whatever you want to extract, or your chilies, or your oranges, or your mints, whatever you want to get the essence from. Start to brew that through fermentation extraction, and then you'll get your goodies that way. You'll get your IPMs. You'll get good nutrient horsetails. And you can take it so many directions, but you're going to use the fermentation as your extraction.
Okay. And bioceramics people are still a little confused on what bioceramic is, and then they want to know, where can you get the powder from?
SCD probiotics, Terraganics, both sell a ceramic powder that functions the same. Those are the two, and it's a ground up quartz that's been fired 2,000 degrees and cooled with the probiotics to record their properties and expel far infrared components.
So it kind of leads into what CD Pool Girl is talking about. Could you throw seaweed on the biochar when it cools? Would that have a similar effect?
No, you want the seawater, not the seaweed. The seawater.
Mm-hmm. Well, the seaweed
will burn and char, right? I mean, you may get some char, I guess, from the seaweed, which would be mineral, but it's not going to be as surface covered area or microbial covered area to create the directional flow required for the speed to do what Graviton charcoal is capable of doing.
It might be an interesting experiment nonetheless, because you would be getting some form of ash.
Right.
As a result, if the biochar is red hot and you throw, kelp or seaweed or something on top of it, you might actually get an interesting, end substance. I don't know. It just depends on how much char, how much seaweed. You might cool the char too quick. Maybe throw the seaweed in the liquid where you are, trying to snap that biochar into the microbial solution.
It'll be cool to see. It'll be cool to see.
Yeah, it's
Well,
working.
right now, I'm making char from spent shiitake blocks. So you have mycelium around this oak hard little block, so that mycelium is just packed with minerals, right? So we figure like making the char with all these minerals already in, and it's oak. How would that function? And what's but definitely things that already have a lot of minerals or mycelium like that should make interesting char. Get us there.
Okay, next question. Does quartz contain carbon?
Yes. Yes, actually, the Silicon Valley, silica, quartz is how all of our phones, computers, quartz is highly demand, it's highly conductive, holds information, sends out information, keeps watch time very sharply for a long time. Yeah, quartz is highly prized.
Just remember, right? How do you make a diamond? You compress carbon.
Yes.
Okay, and they wanted to know, heard of Pod Chef?
Never.
Neither have I. Leighton?
No. What is it?
I think it's somebody's YouTube channel that's working with this stuff as well, but I have no idea. I've never heard of them either. So
okay, so Mirror from the Matrix, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who this or what it is?
Okay. Hello, Chit Mike, making my first 50-pound batch of bokashi in a couple of days. Would spring water or distilled water be best to inoculation?
Spring water every time.
Absolutely. Distilled water, you lost all your minerals.
Right? Yeah. You don't want to strip that water out and don't use that distilled water, but keep as much of the natural as possible.
As many building blocks as you can have is what you want. How to make bokashi without buying expensive bottles or pouches of dry material.
So get yourself some wheat bran, some rice bran. If you want to buy that, I get Coffee Shaft. They give that away free. You can use beer waste. Wood shavings also works. Bokashi means fermented organic matter. So basically any organic matter you can make bokashi with. The nutrient level of that organic matter, though, is going to determine the quality of your bokashi. But you basically would take about 50 pounds of the substrate that's dry and I get about 4 ounces of EM, 4 ounces of molasses to 5 gallons of water. And then I can toss that water onto about 50 pounds of substrate, mix it all up good until I get about a 20% moisture content, which means when I squeeze the bokashi, just a very little water starts to squeeze out of the bokashi and it holds together. I don't want it dripping with water, but just a very little bit so it holds together. Then I'll take that into an anaerobic fermentation for a couple of weeks.
Sorry, I'm just trying to grab some more questions here. Guys, the questions are coming so fast. Sorry if I miss some, but this isn't going to be the end. So
yeah, hey, look, if you don't see your name, your question highlighted in blue, ask it again, just so Ken can keep up.
Yeah, and guys, remember in the comment section after the video, you can put questions in there, and we'll try to get them addressed. I'll try to save them and get them addressed for the next one. So, do you order the super ceramic powder?
Yes.
That was easy.
Another thing that people can do is the USGS. They basically tell you in your area all of the mines that have been operating, both past and present. And I've gotten a lot of really powerful mineral dusts from granite mines, from these serpentine mines, the green marble, because they're just like throwing rocks on top of rocks. They crush it, and then if you go push the rocks apart, you get this amazing dust. There was a quartz mine in Connecticut that we used to regularly go to, and I would always grab, a couple of scoops of that, the tailings, for my work in doing my compost making. I'd throw the rock dust right into the compost pile. So just look around you, because you may have a source right near you that you don't have to buy any of this stuff.
There you go. It's always a matter of keep your mind and your eyes open. Things are available that you never even looked at before. Who's growing mushrooms in your area? You can grab that stuff. There's so much available that people are throwing away that we can recycle that are so good for us. Can you provide a link with the EM manual you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll have my partner send one on the bottom of the screen at the end of the show. We'll type up EM teacher's manual with the link on there.
Cool. And then I can, if you send that to me, I can put it in the description so people can access it, awesome. In perpetual or perpetuity or whatever you call it. Hey, guys, what about the full EM uses? Fermentation, nitrogen, and herbicide efficiency, inoculate, anything else you have seen in your experience?
I think he covered it, yeah.
So Cass, think about what he said about that pond he's been treated for 2 years. Some of the kettles near you, imagine if you've been throwing EM into those. A kettle is a glacial lake out on the, in Massachusetts, it was a sandbar. So we had a lot of kettles. And those kettles, unfortunately, especially when they're near a lot of the ag production, have been horribly polluted. Like, there were so many lakes on Cape Cod that when I was a kid would go to, crystal friggin' clear. You could see tons of fish. And then as the land got developed and put into agriculture or residential development, now they're all, algaed up. There's very little fish in there. So, I mean, you live in a paradise down there. So imagine starting to throw, some of the EMs into the kettles and lakes and ponds around you.
Mm-hmm. Well, the story I remember was somebody was throwing or teaching a chorus, and they had the kids make EM balls, and they took it down to the river by the bridge, and they were throwing in EM balls for Earth Day. And the person went back a little while later, and all the sediment was gone. And I think it was in Portland. And
that's in Napa. That was the kids in Napa when I first started teaching.
It was you. I thought I kind of thought it was on another show that you had done. But yeah, they had to stop a development because life came back into the salt flats. So amazing what EM can actually do.
Yeah, it brings back life. Those shellfish came back. We always see the beavers. It's weird, the beavers always want to show up too once you start cleaning the water.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, man. So you could just tell, like, to me, that's like the worm showing up. The beaver comes to help. I'm just like, holy shit, man, that's amazing. So the macro always follows the microbe.
Yep. So Cass wants to know how long have you brewed a batch? You're saying over 20 years?
Yeah. But I keep mine brewing all the time. Mine's doesn't it's not 20-year-old and sitting. I keep the thing exercising. I keep the thing moving all the time. I'm brewing it all the time. But I've had it over 20 years. My original batch before 9/11 struck, the EM had a different formula. But then when 9/11 happened, they had to change the formula. So I don't know if mine is so successful because I have the old brew, or maybe the new brew can't do that. I'm not sure. But the old brew that I have, I'm sure the new one can do it too. But the old one, they changed definitely something was different with about the PNSB.
Maybe it was a different strain.
No, they're the same, but it seems like for some reason the colors with the old brew, when the EM works for a while in certain areas like septic tanks and things like that, it gets into a very reddy kind of a color, reddish kind of a I don't know. It gets very red, so it's something different as to where the other one seems to get a little more purpley. The old one's like red.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's something that's holding in the pigments. I'm not sure.
Okay. When brewing, what is the thing you look for? Fresh plants, plant hormones, etc.
So I think he means when you're making bokashi, not brewing, right?
Well, when I'm brewing, typically I'm looking to just keep the microbes going. But if I need to make something for flowering or for fruiting, that's when the organic matter is going to change in my FPJ, if you would.
Yeah, in your fermenting process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think so. To answer his question, you said 10 to 14 days is all you need in the fermentation process before it's ready to be used.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of leads into the next question. Jadam microbial solution a good alternative or not?
Excellent alternative. But I always use EM too. For some reason, when we learned this stuff, the EM guys, when then KNF came in the Jadam, we were excited because it was something new to add to our things, right? Like a more specific additive to the EM. But the schools of thought who seem like they did the Jadam first or the KNF and then learned about EM doesn't seem like they have to choose which one they want to use. So, we always use all the methodologies, adding a little EM into so many different things. And we find
that's always great. That's always been my bitch about all the camps. Soil food webs, biochar.
Gets annoying sometimes.
We're all the fucking same, people. Quit fighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about what?
Yeah,
biology.
And all the different methodologies, whether they think about it or not, they're increasing the biology, they're increasing the biomass. It really boils down to the biology, but that's my rant all the time. So,
good title.
I'd like to know more about infrared technique.
Infrared's not a technique. It's part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's the size of the wavelength. I'm not an expert at this thing, but I know the wavelengths, the top and bottoms are just about the size of molecules. And when the wavelengths hit the top and the bottoms, just like the poles of the Earth, it gets those little guys to spin. It creates mitosis or cellular division because it's right at that cell size. So it seems to be able to get biology to regenerate much quicker. So it's part of the light spectrum. And as we know, light is what fuels plants to drive and grow and biology to grow. So it's just part of those components that's light, but more of a specific color of light.
And
just outside red.
And another thing to understand too is that it's a wave, right? Mm-hmm. So it's magnetic.
Yes.
And there's a lot of work being done using red light to stimulate human cells, especially in cancer patients. Pauline was a big proponent to that. So just look into it. It's really interesting stuff. And we had Wolf, the lighting guy, on here. We were started to get into the power of it, but I love Wolf, but he gets crazy. He gets wound up like a motherfucker. He's hard.
Yeah, he fucking knows his shit though, dude.
Damn, does he know?
Like he knows it so well.
And you don't want to cut him off because he's on fucking. He's rolling, and you never know where you're gonna go. But it's like if you cut him off, you're gonna lose his train of thought, and maybe what you need to hear won't come out.
So that's why I can't wait. Like, EM, if you're listening, let's take your powder and let's put it into light bulbs. Imagine, Leighton, getting that. We can put the ceramic powder into the glass, 1 or 2%.
Yep.
All the fucking LEDs that are just shooting little particle beams down, we could change that into a wave by going through the glass lens, right? And then we just revamp the lighting industry altogether, because now those LEDs aren't kicking no waves. They're pierced little needle piercers, you know? But we can apply the wave by adding the ceramic to the glass. I mean, Dr. Higa's already making glass beds. I don't, know if you know this, but it's like the ceramic and glass are hand in hand. So man,
there's a lot of discussion about going back to incandescent because of how poorly LEDs are affecting human health.
That's why I think we put it in the glass. All we got to do is change the glass a little bit.
And
fucking the rock.
There was a lot of work done with certain formulas of glass making that had all kinds of crazy properties. Like, I don't know if you've heard about the blue glass. The blue glass that you wear, you can actually see things that you're not supposed to see, and that's why they were banned. But it was taken away from us. I forget the name of it. It's not indigo glass, but it's really wild.
Now, I do want to point out two things. One from MIT, they were studying dawn and dusk in the infrared, and they noticed that molecules of water, instead of coming off a water body singularly, they were coming off in sheets, which shows that there's a definite energization there. And then the other thing, Dr. Pollock's research, he found his tubes, when the student had introduced by accident infrared or far red light closer to the experiment, they saw a drastic increase in the fourth phase of water in it became
a stronger pump.
Yes. So there is huge on that infrared that we're not using, and I love the idea of changing the glass and that, because if that can make that change, oh my goodness, the indoor industry,
bingo, oh man. And like, it's not just the plant industry using red light. You look at the medical industry, all these red light products that are coming out. That's what they're dealing with, the far infrared. Of course, they're just using red light bulbs. Some are more better than others. But what they're trying to do is get that wavelength. The thing the bag already does. The bag that does that thing to the wine, it could do that all day. It doesn't need to be plugged in. It just does it all the time. It just does it. You can't stop it. It just does it.
Infrared therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll jump onto this one here. Do you ever use a surfactant like Jadam wetting agent when quenching a char pile? Would it be compatible with the tea quench?
Not quite. I mean, it would be great, I think, but what we're looking for is a surface area coverage of minerals. Well, we want a good coverage of minerals on the surface area of the char. Maybe ramping it up a little bit more with some minerals could do that. What we need to start doing is figure out how to test this char so we can figure out what are the best practices. In Japan, the meter that they use, it's pronounced hadu. I don't know what we call it in English, but there's meters that we can test currency of the current of the different carbon. So this is what these talks are for, to encourage everybody to get together on here so we can try to figure out how to get this carbon, the testing and regularly, and then what methods are producing the highest charges.
We need the scientists to do the work.
Well, no, careful, not the scientists. We need the meters. We need the inventors to create these units of measurement and the equipment to measure them.
100%.
So that the scientists can verify it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Okay. Does EM have any endophytic fungi and bacteria?
Ooh, that's kind of a
Yeah.
specialty, huh?
Well,
The way
I
the
would say
bacteria.
no. There's only 3 organisms in the EM.
Well, there's 3 bases, but there's up to 80 different kinds of microbes in there. They don't tell you what all of them are. But
Okay.
the list, because of registry, they're going to give you the main components. But there's a lot of subspecies in there that they have in the brew that are known to them. A lot of them are endophytic. I think that's why they work so well.
There you go.
Either they work endophytically within another microbe, that then works endophytically with the host plant, but it's the inside of stuff, you know. And since it's like the basis, it seems to work very compatible that way, and that it doesn't come to take over. It never takes over an environment, which is very interesting with this microbial product. Like you could use it for years and years and years, and you'll never see it barely see it under lab testing, even though the fields have used them continually. And that's because they always get gobbled up by the IMOs that are there or by the host plants that are there. But they never want to come to like dominate the environment within their own cultures. But they want to build up the existing cultures for that area. Super endophytic.
Anything to add, Leighton?
No, yeah, that's spot on. Interestingly, I did not know about the subcultures, so that's cool information, and it does make sense that it works so well that if it has endophytes.
Well, and everything wants to run in balance, and that's why it doesn't go away. It just finds its balance within the solution and then within the soil and plants.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it irradiated with the far red?
No, that's going to be a different part of the light spectrum. I believe if you're talking about like radiation, that goes towards the gamma rays, towards the purple ends. That's what we refer to more of the radiation. But this is the opposite end of that. This is the life-giving side of stuff. So this is the subtle energy of things coming to being. It's that frequency.
Yeah, we're not trying to nuke it.
Yeah. And it seems like with the higher vibrations, like with the radiation, the frequency from the far infrared, it stimulates the outside high frequency, but a low vibration on the inside, as to where the other radiation, gamma rays, are high frequency on the outside and super high frequency on the inside too. That's what gets them to pop and explode. So ours are just tickling the outside with a very soft, subtle on the inside.
Working with instead of blowing up.
Yes. Sometimes you got to blow stuff up, but not in this case.
Yeah. Anaerobic bokashi stink bad?
Great. If your bokashi stinks, something probably went wrong. Putrefaction is a good sign that your batch is not favorable. It should always be, when you're done, when you're making a fermentation, it should smell good when you crack that thing. It's almost winey, bread-like even, but it should be satisfying to the olfactories and not putrefaction that you don't like. But there are some people that can't take the smell of like a kombucha even. They're very sensitive to that. So, I can say, sometimes what I say doesn't stink. Somebody will be like, oh man, that's terrible. But, it should smell pretty good and sweet. Sweet
is the key one. That's the key word. That's, when I was doing the early work on with, taking aquatic manures, oh my God, did it stink. It stunk to hell and back. But after you've bubbled it for long enough, aerobically stabilized it, it would have a sweet smell. I mean, it still smelled funny. And remember, our nose is designed to prevent us from consuming something that's going to hurt us.
Right.
And so that's why some people's noses are super sensitive to things that others are not, because maybe they've got something in their genetics that need to make them stay away from certain things.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, you want to eat the bokashi when it's done right. God, it smells so good, and your body just wants to take a handful of that thing. So you'll know.
I'm wondering if that with the bioceramics, if you could have somebody that spins bowls, make your containers, large containers, using that in the actual structure, and use that with would it help with your fermentations?
Well, I don't know if EM still does, but the old buckets, the new buckets they have, I don't know about them, but the old buckets they used to have already had the bioceramic in them. They were fired into the plastic molds. So they already had all the old company, all those old buckets they used to have. It's all inoculated in the plastics already. Like we would actually get those buckets and not use them for composting. We'll drill holes in the bottom and grow a pot out of them. But those, yeah, they're all bioceramic up, So that they already do that. They sell jewelry and stuff that's beaded ceramic and plastic, cool little necklace beads and bracelets. So you can always have that bioceramic charge in them. So they'd fire in the ceramics with a lot of plastics. And like I told you, Dr. Higa's now making beds, glass beds with bioceramics, so we can lay there and always have that far infrared.
Cool.
Very cool.
Energy, frequency, vibration, guys.
Yes, man.
Oh, man.
Don't know if heavy metals go through anybody know if heavy metals will go through the stomata?
Well, that's an interesting question. If it was a dynamic accumulator, like a hemp plant or maybe a comfrey plant, and lived through many, many, many cycles, in other words, it didn't die. I know this sounds crazy, but there are cannabis trees in Thailand and stuff that have just gone for generations. And so I would assume at some point a biodynamic accumulator could accumulate enough molecules for them to settle out like a grain of sand. I don't know if it would actually pass through the stomata. Those little pores are very, very small, but could it be possible? Common sense is that, yeah, it could be possible. They could actually shed them at some point in time, but don't know of any studies that I've ever heard that looked for that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, your plant is breathing, and we know there's lots of different components in biology in the air that we're breathing. So if the plant's breathing that in, it's going to be getting components coming in through the stomata into the available structure so that the biology can use it. So anything is like anything is possible.
Yeah, and they sweat too, so it could come out in the water.
Yep. So that's it for the questions, guys. I'm sure I missed a whole bunch, but we won't do any more questions. I like to hear you guys talk about what's you guys are doing now and what the future looks like with you guys. I know, Leighton, you've got a special coming up next week, but let's talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing for the bright future that is coming.
I would say all of the information, knowledge that was or has been taken away from us is really starting to come out. And whether it's woo woo or whether it's that's questionable, people are still talking about it. And once you get a conversation started, and maybe you can actually get that little light switch to flip and get them to say, well, I don't know necessarily believe it, but it kind of sounds like that's pretty cool or interesting. If you can gain that spark of interest, that's all it takes. And so I tend to believe that, like you said, in the next couple of years, just based on AI alone, that a lot of this information will come out, and people will begin to start talking about food as medicine. And prior to, I think, 1920, we had thousands of homeopathic hospitals. Homeopathic, no pharmaceutical, pure plants and diets and exercise and mental strength and acuity. I tend to believe that those are going to become, let's face it, like everybody's so anti, big pharma, big medicine, Doctors can't even the only thing they can do is diagnose. They can't treat you anymore. They're not allowed to treat you. And you're seeing more and more doctors coming out saying, I'm ripping up my license. I've had enough of this shit. All I'm doing is hurting people. I'm not helping them in any way, shape, or form. And they can't afford the services anyway. So that's as the prices continue to skyrocket as they're gouging us, more and more people will be pushed into a homeopathic, medical treatment, like what Pauline was doing. He was not doing chemos or any narcotics. It was all, she used cannabis, but the rest were different types of plants extracted different ways, whether they were teas, pills, or any other variety, liquids. And as long as she was taking those, the cancer was at bay. It was only when, at the throes of friggin' COVID, when we were running short on money, and she started to panic and get upset, and she quietly went off her herbs and her cannabis without saying anything to either her children or myself. And then 3 months later, it came roaring back. She'd still be here if she had the faith to just hang on a little bit longer. But we were pretty damn desperate at that point, because all of the expense of all of those treatments were taking a toll on how much longer we had as far as a financial runway, and because I was not considered essential, and she couldn't work because she was so struck by the cancer. So it was a double whammy. But I believe in the bottom of my heart she would still be here if she had held the faith. Now, was that the universe's intention? I don't know. Maybe the universe took her away from me to piss me off, to drive even harder in the future, right? Mm-hmm. And carry that torch loud and proud. Because let's face it, prior to her going through that, I've been a big part of the cannabis industry and community. I learned, early on that most people consider cannabis their medicine. And I understood it helped. Like, I knew it helped with seizures. I knew it helped some people cope with society, or be able to be out in public without having an anxiety attack. But there's way more to that plant than just those little things. There's real medical value in it. And Dr. Ethan Russo has really come, out full circle from where he was working with the pharmaceutical industries, to the point where now he's like, THCA, incredibly valuable. Terpenes, incredibly valuable. Cannabinoids, especially the rares and the minors, incredibly powerful. And, he's, I think for the last 5 years now, maybe 4, he's been focusing on breeding plants that are expressing some of these compounds at higher and higher levels, like CBG. They took CBG, which was a minor, and turned it into a major in a lot of these hemp strains. And his goal is to continue to do that, to drive that natural plant evolution as fast as he can, to get those expressions out. Because as he unlocks what those expressions do medically, again, it's only going to make these things, this special plant, more powerful than what we've given it credit for. Yeah, sure, it's fun to get high, but imagine if you could really start healing some of these, especially the immune systems, which have just taken a beating in our lives. From when I was a kid to now, there were no peanut allergies. Nobody fucking had allergies. Maybe you got fucking a bite from a mosquito and you had a mosquito bump, but that's not an allergy. That's a reaction to the poison in the mosquito, right? But now you got friggin' people that are allergic to bees, allergic to mosquito bites, allergic to tick bites, and that wasn't a thing. So yeah, in many ways, I think the future is very bright in those scenarios where we're really starting to understand and unlock some of the more powerful medicinal values of the cannabis plant. And I guarantee you that's going to lead to other plants, right? It's always been in my mind, cannabis, I would hope cannabis would be the bridge between big ag and the local community. Because if cannabis, this heavy feeding plant, can be taken care of naturally with rock dusts and compost extracts and teas, and then why isn't big ag doing it, right? And but now, more importantly, the medicinal side and the nutritional side of the awareness that cannabis has brought out, because they're like, well, if you can breed CBD into CBG, or the expression turning CDC, what is it? The precursor to THC, CBC, CBN. If you can focus CBN to go to a CBG and not a CBD, what are the other magical things that you could do to unlock fruits, especially fruits? I mean, every fruit has a very powerful medicinal value that we've lost because they're all grown synthetically. So, in the old days, an apple a day keeps their doctor away. There was a lot of truth to that, a real lot of truth to that. Nowadays, you say that, people look at you, oh, you're an old timer. Anyway, I didn't mean to rant and rave, bro. Take this back. Bring it back. What are your future thoughts? What are you feeling happy about?
Man, I'm kind of pumped. I am. We're involved in a community that we were growing this plant underground and managed to share information, seeds with each other, business links. We managed to keep this thing alive. And those of us who were doing it, for the medical side, and new people were feeling better, we held on to something special that now the world takes this plant as medicine. Science takes this plant as medicine. We always had intuition. It made us feel better. There was always a group of people that just partied with it, but some of us held this plant for its healing capacity. Mm-hmm. And I feel very fortunate to be surrounded by those people. And the next thing that was handed to them was soil. The cannabis people who wanted to grow really good medicine then naturally fell into soil. It was related to producing good medicine. And these are dreamers, you guys. These are dreamers that, as long as a few people believed that we had each other, we had each other's back, we were able to continue on despite potentially being arrested, or killed, or all these things that go with illicit markets. So carrying those components, we were able to take it into soil. And I think the same thing. We brought these ideas into big ag. It was so dominated by MPK. Our background in cannabis made them even harder for them to listen to us. But we believed in each other, and in these products and in soil. And look where we are today, you guys. Look what's happening around the world. Look what EM and MIT now are partnering on. There's something to be said when we can get each other's backs on something as genuine as a healing plant, or soil. And I feel like these are just the beginnings. Like Leighton said, there's other plants that are being talked about now. There's other funguses that are amazing and can help us, And the more we get used to working with these elements and dealing with the naysayers, as long as we have the backs of, and the people have our back who are authentic and pushing towards the same thing, it's unstoppable. And it's those things that are bigger than the people who are talking about them. We're not bigger than the microbes. We're not bigger than cannabis. These things have always been here. We're just the voices for them. But what we need to do is get together more. We need to talk more and share more. We need to get together outside of businesses, outside of profit. And really, this is what inspired us from back in the day when we were closet growing. Taking lights, down from old buildings because they didn't even sell grow lights. We were taking turns. We had people who did special things, right? And that's what we have to there was a recipe, you guys, that we learned that we're not following those recipes anymore. So if we take the recipe we learned on how we brought cannabis out of the closet and how we brought living soil from just a hippie woo-woo thing to real science being researched and shared, there's really nothing we cannot do if we put our minds together. And that's really what we need to do now, is get together with people with like-minded ideas and influence each other, you know, and don't bring down other areas and spend time trying to tear down when we could be building up. There's so much to be built up that it's all, if we're all doing the same thing together and authentically, it'll all lead and we'll all see each other come together again at a certain point. But it's not a competition. It's not a race thing. You know, it's not a cultural thing. We got to live here. Younger generation, our kids are here. You know, this is what we get to leave behind. Our kids are going to play this in the future. They're going to hear what dads are doing and how we try to spread the message. And this is important to leave behind for them. But as we get older and we get tired, as our resources become less, our community gets stronger. And that's what lifts us up from those times of being down. So I want everyone, you know, to reach out to the people important to you. Reach out to people you thought would never talk to you but are working in the field. So many people like to just reach out to me on Instagram or something. And we'll end up with phone calls because I just say I'm not going to be texting. And the point is, like, we can share that knowledge so quickly together. We can inspire someone to do their thing, to then they go share. And that's how it's going to work. We can't come off that recipe. We got to reinforce the recipe that got us here, and keep it done in a good way, you know, for doing our work, and we're not find ourselves not smiling, or we can't hear the birds anymore. Something's going on. Stop for a second. Give thanks that you made it this damn far. Listen to the birds for a second, and get back on that joy that got you here. You know, there's a lot of joy that got you here. That's really what's going to get us there. It's going to have to be done in a good way, smile on our face, you know, and olive branch out to people who are different from us. And I think that's really important too, is we're going to work with people who are not like us. You know this, Leighton. We're sitting at the table with suits, CEOs of agencies, and they're not like us. But we have to, like, embrace the fact that at least we're here together. Maybe I'll get a crack this time. But we have to really appreciate, like, dude, this is kind of cool. We're sitting together, all these different fucking people. You know, this is amazing what regenerative soil can bring together.
Stop looking at individuals and look at a species, because our species is the human race. And instead of looking at, you know, creeds and colors and shit like that, just look at everybody as your brother and sister, because we're all human. And we all need the same things. And Leighton, you know, the apothecary is coming back, and we need more people. If you can find a local apothecary, support those people. It's all about the building blocks in your body to be able to create healthy cells in your body. If you're not creating healthy cells, you're having an issue. But guys, you know, this has been an amazing conversation. For those asking about Andy Lopez, I just got a message that he's feeling good, so he should be back Wednesday. Next week, Leighton's on by himself, as far as I understand. He's got a special for us. We're not going to get into it now. Also, Gerald Pollock has rebooked. He's coming up in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. So we'll be able to talk again about the fourth phase of water, get more into that. But other than that, guys, I appreciate you guys and what you're doing and talking about so much. And I appreciate our chat. Anybody that wants to help support, we have the join button now. You can easily help support our channel and what we're doing. I'm also looking for volunteers, guys. Anybody that has a few hours that wants to help me reach out to more guests, reach out to it's all about the biology at gmail.com. I need volunteers to help get more people coming onto the shows. I want to start more shows to get more of a volume to make YouTube and the world stand up and go, hey, look at this channel, because we've been the best kept secret on YouTube for a long time. We need that secret to get out to more and more people.
Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
good job, guys. Always nice talking to you all. Leighton, appreciate you. Ken, you're the man.
Mr. Villa, thank you so much for all that you share and all the hard work that you do behind the scenes with the educational and diving down these rabbit holes. Ken, as always, dude, thank you so much for all the behind the scene work that you do to put this together every week. And we'll see you guys soon.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Okay, guys. See you on Wednesday.
Peace out.